Rabobank has been a sponsor for 10 years of the 13 years that we have had the Inclusive Finance, earlier Microfinance India and now Inclusive Finance India Summit. So this is a very special relationship and has sustained over these years. So I'd like to request Arindam to share some of his thoughts of the conference this year, but not just this year, but also maybe a little bit of past perspective, but over to you.
Thanks, Radhika. Well, it's tough to say that what makes the conference tick, but one thing that definitely makes this conference wonderful and the way we get all the stakeholders, not only from India, but all of the world, is the charisma of Vipin Sharma. Let's give him credit. It's been 13 years. It's been 13 years now, and the conference is growing in terms of participation, in terms of content, so that's one. The second part is from the content perspective. If you see globally, the annual report which is released during the conference, that's one of the most downloaded reports on microfinance and one of the most well-read reports on microfinance. In fact, when anybody gets interested in the India microfinance sector, the one thing I advise them is first to go through that report and also to attend this conference. So it's that helpful. And the third is, well, the stakeholders, the diverse stakeholders that this conference gets into the table, and the way the conference has been evolving in terms of, changing with the times, changing with the needs of the industry. It started off as a microfinance platform, but then from there it's grown, which is wonderful because now we see the different panels and the different discussion points, which are much more diverse than the narrow focus it had earlier. And lastly, I would say is just as in financial inclusion, a lot of technology is now getting imbibed, and technology is playing a very important role. I see that the conference has also imbibed a lot of technology. We see that behind us, we see the Twitter handles. So that's amazing to see, and I wish you all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Arindam. Those were all very nice things, but you were allowed to give some critical feedback as well, though.
That's for later.
So that's for the advisory group meeting, I suppose. I'd now next like to request Ms. Kalpana Pandey. She represents, of course, Chris Highmark, who has been a critical technical partner for the summit for the last couple of years. And also, they're a partner, in general, we know that one of the two leading microfinance credit bureaus. So from a technical stakeholder, Kalpana, please tell us what your views are.
Okay. So in addition to what Mr. Datta was saying, I think this is the biggest event of the sector. And I think all stakeholders who are directly or indirectly connected with this sector ensure that they attend this event. So this is one of the best place to meet up with all the people. And the way I see the event getting organized, I think it is becoming better and better every year. So whether it is choosing the venue, dates, the agenda, the way the sessions have been organized with the context, what is happening in the industry, and the speakers who have been called, I think it becomes a very, very rich and informative takeaways which we get from each and every event. Rather, there are so many events that at times we feel that, why we are not able to attend the other event. So that's how well covered, they cover almost every aspect of the sector. So I think in that sense, it has been really good. Some of the new things, as Mr. Datta was also saying, plus even making the comments, what speakers are saying, on the spot, on the screen, I think, which I found was very good, because at times if you are missing some of the points, but they are actually getting highlighted. So those points are very good. About the report, he already spoke about the data which is there in all the documents which are getting circulated, whether it is the annual report or even the leaflets which are being circulated. I think very, very rich information. So I would like to really compliment the organizers and the sponsors for organizing this event. Very good experience. Thank you.
I think This looks terribly rigged, though. No? Okay, you'll criticize? No, that's not your role. You're supposed to summarize. Stick to your job description, please, Professor. Okay, so next is, of course, Steve Rasmussen. CGAP has been associated with the summit for the last several years as a technical partner. And particularly, Steve has been participating in the conference for several years, but this year he has joined after a gap of a couple of years, if I'm right. So I think maybe he can give us some perspective on how he sees. So I think it's his first conference since after we transitioned from microfinance to Inclusive Finance India. And after a gap of a couple of years, maybe you can tell us both suggestions and feedback.
So I'm also going to be positive because I know Malcolm's going to go the other way. So I'm going to leave that for him. One of the differences this year was not seeing government people here. But then that's why I'm sitting here. Otherwise, you would have had someone else sitting here commenting on this to you. But I would say I was reminded this year of what I really like about coming here. And I think it's, and I've come many times before, it goes way back. It's the exciting developments of what's going on in India. It's the energy in the room, it's the depth of discussion, and great networking opportunities with people I've known for a long time, plus new people. I think the interesting, but some things, and that stayed the same through all these years, and I think that's important. I think there is something to be said about continuity. Where the changes come is being more in the topics that are taken up, and I think that has been good. From my point of view, I think every year the topics change and move and go along. I would say one other observation about what I like is it used to be a real struggle some years ago to run a panel without everyone coming with 100 PowerPoint slides. It was death by PowerPoint. And we've gotten over to some really good discussion. I was in a number of sessions this year, almost all of them, where I really thought the discussion was good. And to me, that's important. That's the important part of it. And so I congratulate the organizers on that. I have one other set of observations, and that is that what happens in India has, over the years, become more and more important to the global community. For many of you, you see it in the India context, and India is a world unto itself, no doubt. But what happens here is really watched carefully around the world. I get questions all the time about that. And you can imagine that some of it are all these new topics we're talking about. Aadhaar, the rest of the India stack, the payments banks, demonetization, which is a relatively recent issue. But also about where's the microfinance sector going? You've had 2 IPOs in the last year. We're talking about small finance banks. I'm still asked about post-Andhra 2010. But even the SHGs, there's lots of things about India that the rest of the world is watching. And I think my observation on that is, I see the role of government changing. I can remember coming to this conference, say 8 or 10 years ago, and most people who weren't in the government were criticizing what the government was doing. I didn't hear that this time. I heard a lot of private sector people saying what the government's doing has really helped us. And I think it's a changing role of government. We still have that legacy, state-owned banks and government doing this and loan forgiveness and the things we used to criticize. But frankly, we're now seeing a changing role of government. I think, if anything, India's going to teach the world a huge amount on that front. So I've gone away with lots that I've learned and lots of observations, and I want to thank all of you.
Thank you, Steve. And so Malcolm is suggesting that since the 3 volunteers that are up here on the stage seem to be handpicked by the organizers, If there are any other volunteers who, if a couple of people want to voluntarily.
Good evening. I am Dilip Deshpande, Director of Bankers Institute of Rural Development, Lucknow, which is a NABARD-sponsored institution. And also, we also conduct an event like this, known as Microfinance Seminar. For me, it was the first time I attended this, and I am really very excited and very thrilled, very impressed by the entire event and the breadth and the depth of the discussions and all the great personalities who shared their thoughts openly and in a very positive atmosphere. I want to thank Vipin Sharma ji for giving me an opportunity to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Deshpande.
He wasn't planted.
Yeah. So मुझे लगता है 2 दिन तक Inclusive Finance India का नमक खाया है. So I don't know if anybody.
Somebody got me at lunchtime for a movie, 5 minutes of what it was. What it's been to attend all microfinance summits, I think from 2004, November onwards, except one. All of them have I attended, and it's been really a beautiful journey. I don't want to repeat everything that everybody has said, but it's great to actually exchange ideas and thoughts in such a good atmosphere where everybody is just continuously thinking and debating and exchanging regardless of whether it's on dais or outside. And I think that's beautiful about the event. I want to say something that we had discussed, Malcolm and I, but I don't want to forget it, and I don't want him to forget it, is that we are both on the editorial committee of Enterprise Development and Microfinance, which is a journal that is produced by Practical Action from London. And we would like to invite articles from as many people as you can to all, on all the issues that have been discussed here. But especially we are doing next year a special edition on collectives and farmer-producer companies. We will announce more about that. But also if you have suggestions on what could be special issues, please let us know. So I think we could definitely have from here not just Indian but international perspectives coming to the EDM. That would be very useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Smita. So we'll move on with the proceedings of the session. So no one else actually, I think, can summarize the deliberations from 100, of what 120 speakers said across 15 sessions, as well as Malcolm has been doing for past several years. So, and he does that in 4 to 5 slides, but this year I'm given to understand that there is no slide either. So over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Radhika. And slides aren't allowed, so I gather. But let me just thank you again, and let me congratulate again Access, Vipin, Radhika, all your colleagues, for conferences are generally a bore, but you managed to make this one nothing of the kind. And one of the new things you've done, which actually you just referred to, is to put up these little sort of pearls, as it were, just as they occur. That has made me redundant, because the summary has been there, and in fact, I've asked the organizers, to the extent that they have your emails, to send you a transcript or a copy of all those little things that have been coming up. As a reminder, sometime next week, when you get home, you should be getting 2 or 3 pages restating all those little things that come up as a reminder. So I won't try even to summarize everything myself. I would like just to pick up that point about one thing that's missing this time, thank God, is, as you say, continued criticism of what government. When I first used to work in India, I thought it was about garment, 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 garment. People talked about nothing except government. I then discovered, A, they were talking about government, and B, there was too much of it. And it's great that the word has hardly been used, actually, except complimentarily sometimes. I don't like politicians. I'm not particularly fond of your present government in many of its forms, but it's great that they seem to be doing the right thing at last. I'll just make one or two comments, as I have to, as I'm told to. I do what I'm told. What I thought one or two things were missing from the proceedings. B, briefly, some things I found a bit disappointing. And C, what I liked. On the things that are missing, I'm sure that many of you are familiar, well, with Banerjee and Carlin and Benny Duflo's work. Basically, they've concluded, having done innumerable RCTs all over the world, that microfinance is not a very big deal. That it makes life a little bit better for a lot of people. It makes life a little bit worse for, thank heavens, a rather smaller number. It makes life actually itself impossible. They kill themselves for, luckily, a very small number. And it makes life absolutely wonderful, also for a tiny number. The message there is don't let's exaggerate the impact of microfinance itself. And I think there's a little bit of a tendency during this couple of days for us to do so. So don't let's get too excited about what, to my mind, is the best possible set of evaluations which show that it isn't quite as big a deal as we like to imagine. One, no, not an unimportant thing that I was surprised was not mentioned. There's been a lot of work in Brazil, in the Bolsa Familiar, in South Africa more recently, and so on, in cash distributions. Oh, sorry, not cash. We don't have cash anymore in India, but financial distribution, which, of course, India, through your e-infrastructure, you're well equipped to do. That was not mentioned at all. Maybe it could be mentioned and dismissed, but I do think it's something that should be considered in this country, and it's part of financial inclusion. There was an excellent session on financial literacy, which is something about which I've always been rather cynical. One reason being that how are you going to create financial literacy for hundreds of millions of people, most of whom are not literate in the regular sense of reading and writing? I'm reminded of the fact that in the UK, in fact, some of you may, and any of you who have computers, I'm sure you do, look up QuickQuid, Q-U-I-C-K, Q-U-I-D, or Wonga, W-O-N-G-A. Put one or other of those words into your Google, and you will find a website for a British-based, American finance, I think, microfinance institution that extends what are called payday loans to lots of people, millions and millions of people. And the first screen you will see says our APR, the rate of interest, is 1,560% per annum, or some similar figure. It's the real figures because the government demands they put that there, and it's on their posters, and it's true. And it doesn't stop people borrowing. They borrow like crazy, millions and millions of them. I don't know if they have similar legislation in the States. So don't fool yourselves that financial literacy can protect people from making financial mistakes, because I think most British, rather smaller number of Americans are literate. They see these figures and they still borrow. So financial literacy is not, to my mind, a solution to financial folly. I think that we shouldn't forget, amongst all the euphoria and the congratulation, and the rather good government on balance you seem to have just now, that, I may be wrong, maybe my figures are out of date on my the things I read, but I saw the other day, India has now reached the happy stage of being the second most unequal country in the world. Russia's beating them. My data may be out of date, but I think India still has far worse figures for child malnutrition, for infant mortality in South Asia. The real things that matter are still a hell of a mess. And I don't think we should jump to the conclusion that because everybody has an Aadhaar card or that everybody is financially included, that all is well. It's just the beginning. And I think there was, dare I say, a little bit too much concentration on what are, after all, the means without much mention of the ends. You asked me to be critical. There's still not exactly a curl of the lip, but the poor, and no, they're not us. And that awful separation, which of course is so true, may blind us to the fact, as I've mentioned before in this room, I think, that not one of us would accept being a client of an MFI. It's second-rate banking for people for whom we can't afford first-rate banking. Don't let's forget that. Don't let's think we've solved the world's problem by 100% financial inclusion or 80% or whatever it might be, whether it be with microfinance. I'm financially illiterate certainly, but also digitally doubly illiterate. I rely on my grandchildren, but they're growing tired of helping me. And I just hope that we're not getting so mesmerized by digital techniques and so on, which of course are wonderful in what they can achieve, particularly for the vast numbers in this country, into believing that when we've got all the software right and we've got all the Aadhaar cards and the digital recognition and this, that, and the next thing, that all is well. It's not. That's only the beginning of people putting 3 meals into their stomachs and being properly educated and having decent health care, which are things that I value. When I think of my own kids and my grandchildren, when they talk about the landmarks in their lives where they've got to, I don't think any of them has ever told me, oh, I've got a bank account now, Grandpa. It's not such a big deal. So let's exaggerate the importance of what we're doing. And I just hope that financial inclusion, enormously enhanced by digital improvements, the digital ecosystem and so on, can lead to real things. You don't have real cash anymore in India, so I guess that the reality, the real economy, is real things like people's welfare. Just to end on being complimentary, it's great to hear that in spite of all, and in spite of it being very bad, the women's situation in India is getting better, thank God. It's been a long time. There's a certain amount of awareness that I've heard in the room this time, which I didn't hear before. People are now aware that the poor pay more for everything. And of course, digitization means that no longer be as true as it used to be. There's also greater awareness, I think, that interest rates, the cost of money, are not necessarily the only thing that matters, and by no means the most important thing, particularly for poorer people. That's a new recognition, I think. There's a great enthusiasm for big data and for, what is it, slices, piles, what was the word? Stacks, that's right. I know nothing of stacks, but don't let's oversell, never mind the jargon, but as I say, the software and so on. It's the only way you can reach the millions or billions of people, but on itself, it can't solve problems. The numbers are dramatic. The achievement with the Aadhaar card, with the Prime Minister's Jan Dhan accounts, they are spectacular. I'm sure the speed with which these things have been achieved is unrivaled. And the numbers, even China, which of course is a great leader in so many things, can't possibly rival the speed, and I suspect the quality of much of what's been achieved just in the last year or two in this country. And the optimism in this room for real results, results not only, I hope, in terms of financial inclusion, but real things, is enormous. And I've never felt that, and I think it's 13 years I've been running this program. I've never felt that in this room before, and it's great. So thank you very much, and let's hope we won't need financial inclusion conferences for very long. I'm very glad to be redundant. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Malcolm. And I must mention that all the updates on the screens that you've been looking at this year are the credit goes to M2I consulting team, and so I think they deserve a round of applause as well. So thank you so much. Finally, I'd like to invite my colleague, Shivani Shankar, who's the lead Inclusive Finance India initiative at Access Assist, for the vote of thanks.
Thanks, Radhika. This is my first year at Access, and I'm very fortunate to be part of a large summit, and very happy to deliver the vote of thanks. 13th year of Access Summit, and we continue to feel overwhelmed and grateful for the support from diverse stakeholders to this effort, coordinated by a very small team at Access and Assist. This year, we have a record 38 stakeholders supporting the summit as sponsors and technical partners. Each year, there is an effort to bring freshness into the summit by introducing new themes, new sub-initiatives, new knowledge products, formats, and etc. Since last 2 years, the big re-engineering was to align the summit to the changing landscape within the access to finance efforts. We are glad that we have been able to pull it off fairly successfully, and the brand of Inclusive Finance India has come to stay. At the end of 2 days, it is most appropriate to thank a host of stakeholders who have helped to bring the summit together. To begin with, I would like to thank all our sponsors for their incredible support and commitment to the summit and the 2 reports. While some like SIDBI, NABARD, Rabobank, MasterCard, HSBC, World Bank Group, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, IDFC Bank, Omidyar Network, IDBI Bank, RBL Bank, Sun King, and D-Light have continued to support over the years, we are very fortunate to add new names this year to the list. Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, State Bank of India, Reliance Commercial Capital, Ujjivan SFB, IndusInd Bank, AU Financiers, Mudra, among others. We are grateful to all the 100+ speakers across India and outside who spoke in 15 sessions over 2 days of the summit for sharing their views and perspectives on various themes and sub-themes. Special thanks to the moderators of the panel for making the extra effort of bringing the panel together. We appreciate the active involvement of all the technical partners who work closely with the Secretariat to put together some of the sessions. Special thanks to M2I and IFMR lead for supporting the Secretariat with summit preparations and reporting. I would like to thank our group of advisors led by Mr. YC Nanda for their support and guidance, and also Mr. N. Srinivasan for being with us to guide us as always. We hope that the summit has been a useful platform for learning, sharing, and networking. Please do send across your feedback and suggestions. We thank all for attending the summit annually. Your participation and engagement encourages us to continue to put in the required energies in organizing this event year after year. Thanks to NUMEC, our event managers, for helping organize such a big event, and also Hotel Ashok and its management. In closing, I would like to appreciate the hard work and efforts of the Summit Secretariat team, Kirti Bhandari, supported by Lalita, Amy, Saintani, and all other Axis team members. Thank you so much, Radhika and Vipin, for your guidance and leadership, and your faith in the new team is truly commendable. With this, we conclude the 2016 Inclusive Finance India Summit. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you exactly a year later on 5th December 2017 at Hotel Ashok.